Welcome to the Trailblazer Talks podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Hope Jones. This podcast is designed to encourage and equip you to be a trailblazer right where you are, to help you discover your God-given purpose and bring you talks each week that will inspire you to do what you were made for. So let's get into this week's episode. Friends, welcome back to another episode of the Trailblazer Talks. I'm excited because this week I have a new friend on the show named Mary Spencer, and she has a book that I think will really help you if you are in your 20s especially, and it's talking all about the different transitions of life and finding ourselves in a new season where maybe we have a new job or we are in a new city, and how do we kind of navigate those life changes to finding friendships in a new city and kind of rediscovering where we are at in a new season of life. But she is a Georgia native known for infusing her writing with relatable and uproarious storytelling, coupled with the profound truths about Jesus. And she currently lives in Nashville with her cat Confetti, and she works for Daystar Counseling Ministries. But she's also a graduate of Auburn University and Belmont University. And I know that you're going to love this conversation. So let's hop into this week's episode. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Trailblazer Talks. And this week you're in for a treat because I have a special guest, Mary Spencer, on the show this week. And I'm so excited for you guys to meet her and to hear about all the amazing things that she's doing. So Mary Spencer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk, Courtney.
Yeah. So I know that you wrote your first book, right? And it released in August. Is that correct? Yeah. So tell us about your book. It's called Cul-de-sac Crossroads, and just kind of how your personal experience shaped your book's content.
Yeah. So I went to college at Auburn University in Alabama, and I went thinking it's going to be so glamorous. I didn't know a single person going, and in the movies, it looks really cool going to a place where you are the new girl and don't know anyone. And I got there and I was sorely mistaken. I was like, I don't know how to make friends. I grew up with the same 55 kids that I graduated with. I don't know what in the world I'm doing. And as I went throughout college, I had to really fight to make friends, figure out where to go to church. I'm from a really small town, so there weren't a lot of options. I wasn't used to having so many options of friends and places to go to church and things like that. And so I'd write down all these stories, and it was on a blog for a while. And I was kind of embarrassed to be like, oh, I'm a blogger. I'm writing on a blog. So I wouldn't tell anybody about it. And a friend of mine, my junior year, kind of encouraged me, why don't you just put your name on it and call it what it is? You're a writer. And I was like, I don't know about that, but I guess I'll do it. So I had like 10 subscribers and I would write kind of irregularly. And then I got to the end of college. My friends and I would talk about how we're about to graduate and we didn't know what we were going to do. And so I turned it into this little semi-book called 22 and Not a Clue, and I would write down all of our stories, and we would talk about how, friends were getting married and moving to their hometowns, or friends were moving to New York and becoming fashion designers, and we were like, this is crazy. How do we know what's the right choice for adulthood? So I'd write all these stories down after college too, and I got to about 26 and I got a book deal, and I'd sent them this book proposal about 22 and Not a Clue, but I had gotten kind of more of a clue, so I changed the name to Cul-de-sac Crossroads. And I grew up in a cul-de-sac, and people would always say, she lives at the end of the street, she lives at a dead end. And to me, that felt like such a negative connotation of where I lived. Like, I lived at the end of the street, but that's where my life began. So I talk about cul-de-sacs in the book, about how a cul-de-sac isn't a dead end and it just reroutes you to a new destination, and how God's constantly doing that in our lives. He's taking us out of this cul-de-sac and bringing us back to a new place. And we're at so many crossroads in our lives, not just in our 20s, but all decades. So the book talks a lot about who you are, and what you're meant for, and how we don't know who we are without knowing whose we are, and what we place on the pedestal of our lives really matters. That's how the book came to be.
I love that. That's such an important message, and one that I wish that I had when I was in college. And I have to say, I went to your rival school, Alabama.
Okay. I love it. Hey, I like Alabama better than Georgia.
Surprisingly, after college, most of my friends ended up being from Auburn, which was so funny. Yeah. So it's so funny because we joke all the time. We're like, oh yeah, we're rivals, but we love each other.
No, I like Alabama people a lot. Georgia people, I'm like, please stop barking at me. Like, this is a lot. But Alabama, I'm like, y'all are just good. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I took my husband to the Iron Bowl for the first time this past year because he grew up in Ohio. And so we live in Ohio now. And so he SEC was not something he had ever experienced. It was like, you got to go to the Iron Bowl. And it was fun. It was a good time.
So much fun. And now y'all are good at basketball and we're good at basketball. I'm like, can you let us have our moment, please?
I know. It was so funny because he was like, he's like, our SEC schools basketball schools now. Like, y'all didn't do good in football last year, but you're killing it in basketball. Like, I guess we're a basketball school now.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah, we play on Saturday, so I'm nervous, but anyway.
I know. Yes. But kind of going back to the cul-de-sac kind of theme that you have, is there like a specific moment that kind of led to your like personal development and things like that you were like really resonated with you that maybe would help somebody else in their moments?
Yeah. I would say a big thing graduating from college is I thought that I was this high performer, high achiever. I did well in school, and then I graduated and I was like, wait, am I actually good at doing life? Because I feel like I'm not succeeding. I don't know how to grade this. That's kind of all we've ever known is like comparing our grades to one another. And now life looks so different for everybody. So I don't know if I'm doing good or bad. And when I graduated from Auburn, I came to Nashville and got my master's in business, which I had no business doing. I was a PR major. I didn't know anything about business. And I just thought it would be fun. I love school. I don't know what I was thinking, but came up here and got my MBA, and I graduated during the pandemic. So got my MBA. I think I'm going to work for a big corporation and make great money and all the things that you think you're going to do as an adult. And, you know, the pandemic really slowed things down, and I would interview for jobs and they would say, hey, we loved you, but this person that has 7 years of experience also applied and is willing to take the same salary. So we're going to have to go with them. And so I applied for hundreds of jobs, and it was really humbling because I was like, I cannot find a job, and I've been jobless for 4 months. And I was kind of like, God, what are we doing here? I thought that I was going to find a job easily. I thought Nashville's where I'm supposed to be. Mm-hmm. What's going on? Can you just open one door? I just want one door open. I don't care what the job is. And I was volunteering with a nonprofit at the time, and they had an opening, and they said, why don't you apply for the job? And I was like, nonprofit work, like I'm going to have no money and be overworked. I don't know about this. And they were like, you should just apply and see. And then the name of the nonprofit is The Next Door. And it was really ironic because I kept praying this prayer of like, can you open one door? And the Lord was like, literally, I'm going to open the next door. So I worked at this nonprofit for 2.5 years, and my boss was like, you're going to work at nonprofits forever. And I was like, lady, I'm going to be here for 2 months until I find a job post-COVID. Like, I'm not going to be here long. She was right. And it's been really cool because the Lord's really redeemed my mindset of, okay, what the world's pushing is the best careers for us, the best lives for us isn't always what's best. And working for a nonprofit in faith-based spaces has been such a great way to grow my faith because I'm challenged by other believers constantly. But that was something that really took me off guard, was finding a job that wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. And I'm so much happier for it. And I see so many people our age that are in these jobs where they work 100-hour weeks and they're miserable and they're just trying to constantly catch up to the next promotion or the next job. And I just think it's so freeing to be where God has us instead of where the world wants us to be in our careers. So
yeah, no, I think that's so special because I remember I was way past the COVID world. I graduated in 2014.
Okay, yeah, much older.
Yeah. But I still remember that struggle of graduating and trying to figure out where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do. And I had similar thoughts, and my degree was in advertising and marketing. And so I was thinking, you know, I'm going to go work in New York City or like Nashville or some big city and work for like a big ad agency and do the whole agency thing. Mm-hmm. I interviewed too in Nashville. I ended up in Birmingham, but I remember how like straining that was of just going through the job process. And I had just come back to my faith at that time too. So I was in that place of like kind of praying, but also like, okay, Lord, I don't know if my prayers matter yet because I haven't been committed that long.
Yeah.
It was so funny too for me, similar to you, where a dream randomly from high school where I remember, I think I put in my like senior year yearbook that I wanted to work for Southern Living.
Wow. Yeah.
And it wasn't on my radar right when I graduated at first. And then I'd been looking in Nashville, I'd been interviewing in Nashville, thought that's where I was going to move. I even signed a lease with a friend.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake I learned quickly. It was never sign a lease before you have a job.
Nope.
Ended up seeing that there was a marketing coordinator position in Birmingham for Southern Living in their cookbook department. And so I ended up applying, didn't know a single soul at this company,
Yeah.
and got the job. And it was just
Wow.
crazy because like God cares about those little like dreams we have that feel little and things like that. But I know you talk a lot about trusting and seeking God authentically. And it sounds like you had to do that too, kind of through that post grad process of navigating that. What advice would you have for the readers who might be like struggling to deepen their faith in kind of challenging times like what you had?
Yeah. I read this stat a couple days ago that 80% of people that grew up in the church are going to walk away from the church by the age of 29, which is so alarming and sad and unexpected. I really expected more people that I knew to walk away from the faith after high school, but it's been so much more prominent after college. And so I think too, coming out of the pandemic, everyone was like, we can just do online church, or we can just, sit at home and read Bible studies. And all of that's super great and, needed at certain different times. But I think it's so important to be a part of a local church and to be all in and involved and to be a part of a place where people notice if you're not there. I was part of a really, really big church when I moved to Nashville, and it was awesome. And there's so many great reasons to be a part of big churches. But I wanted to be at a place where people would notice if I wasn't there, because it's so easy for me to go, you know what? I want to just sit at home on Sunday, relax. I've had a long week and I'll just go next week. And I need people that are like, where were you today? No judgment, but just checking in, make sure you're good. And being a part of a small group has been so beneficial for me too. Having people hold me accountable in my faith, and just sharing the gospel with my coworkers, with my friends, with people that I meet in coffee shops. And so I would say get really involved in a local church and be all in. I wasn't all in a local church, honestly, for the first 3 or 4 years that I lived in Nashville. And I've recently gotten really plugged in and have become a member of a church, and I'm helping with youth group, which has been so much fun and hilarious. And I'm learning so much from sixth graders. One of our pastors at my church, his daughter's in my group, and she knows way more about the Bible than I do. So I'm like, girl, you just take over, go right ahead and teach everybody, because I don't know anything about Judges. So it's been really cool to be all in at church, because I'm like, I'm learning so much and I feel so taken care of by my local church. But it's hard to get plugged in, and nobody likes showing up alone to church. But you're not the only one that's trying to show up alone. And even finding one friend that you can connect with. I really was praying last year. I just want one friend, one single friend to go to church with, to be at different events with. And the Lord placed a friend in my life named Sadie that has become one of my dearest friends. And we met kind of randomly at this event and got coffee. And the first day we got coffee, we were like, okay, I think we're best friends. Like, I think this is happening. So just find that one person and be diligent in prayer. I really struggle with prayer. Prayer is not something that comes naturally to me. I was very used to, growing up praying at meals and praying at church. And other than that, it was kind of like, do I pray? I don't know. And what do I pray for? Is it okay for me to pray about things that feel silly to me? And I've learned now in adulthood, you can pray about anything. And I have a prayer wall in my room that has all my different prayers, and I'll line them up. And once God answers them, I put a sticky note with the answer on it. And there's some that I've had on there for years, but it's been cool to go, okay, God's listening to me, even when I don't feel like it, because I'm quick to go, thanks for answering that, God, move it on to the next thing. And I want to be able to go, okay, no, wait, he's really listening, and I need to be slower to listen to him.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Your 20s have sound very similar to what my 20s were. And now
Yeah.
I'm 33, but I similarly moved to a new city, moved to Birmingham, and I was going to a large church, Church of the Highlands,
Yeah.
and got plugged in at small groups. And our pastor there was basically like, give me 1 year of your life, go all in.
Yeah.
And I promise you'll look different on the other side of it. And I, like I
Awesome.
mentioned, I'd just come back to my faith, and that was a game changer for me. But going to small groups and getting involved is what helped me find like my friend group as well.
Yeah.
What is there anything else too that you would, I know you talk a lot about community, and you just talked about how church was so game changing for you with finding
Yeah.
friends in a new city. Is there anything you would tell kind of women in their 20s or even 30s, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
to continue like showing up and contributing to their local church, and just advice for like moving to a new city and kind of starting over? Because I know that can be, I've moved quite a few times the past
Yeah.
few years, and
Yeah.
it is hard starting over, making friends, even in my 30s. Like, it's hard trying to find your people. So what advice would you give them in addition to like small groups? Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think there's so many people our age that are moving to new cities where they don't know anyone. And you get there and you're like, okay, why did I do this? Because it's so hard to make friends as an adult. In college, it's like be a part of a sorority or some clubs and you'll find your people, or in class. And as an adult, it's like, I hope you like your coworkers because that's really the only people you know. And so when I got to Nashville, I did this in college. So when I moved to Auburn, didn't know anybody. And second semester, I was like, I need to stop being so woe is me. I need to figure out how to make friends and pick myself up out of the bootstraps. So I was like, I'm going to ask a stranger to lunch every single week for this semester. And I don't know where I'm going to meet these strangers. Maybe it's people in class. Maybe it's people in the line for chicken salad chick. I'm just going to start asking people to hang out and see what happens. And I did that for 16 weeks. And some of the girls became my best friends. We would get lunch together all the time. I lived with a few after my senior year and then was in a few of their weddings. And then there was a few where it was like, we hung out that one time and never hung out again, but we would see each other around campus and wave, and I would have another friendly face to talk to sometimes on campus. So when I got to Nashville, I was like, I'm going to do the same thing, I guess. It's going to be a lot harder to meet strangers, but I just started asking people in a coffee shop to hang out. I had this barista that seemed really nice. I could tell she was a believer. And so we hung out and became really great friends. And I was actually in her wedding. And
Gosh, that's awesome.
yeah, it was, who would have ever thought,
Yeah.
that a friendship from a coffee shop would turn into all of that. But you never know where you're going to meet people. And I would say to the listener that's struggling with friendships and trying to find people in their city, everybody's feeling very, very similar to how you feel. When you look around a room at church or at a coffee shop or at work, everybody's seeking connection, and it's so much harder to make those connections because we feel like Instagram and social media helps us be connected, but it leaves us feeling more isolated. So I would look around and find the person in the room that you want to get to know and just ask them to hang out, because it's so flattering, first of all, to get asked to hang out. I'm always like, yes, let's please hang out. No one's going to say, oh, no, I don't want to hang out with you. So I would just try that. And something else that's been super beneficial for me is finding mentors in my city. I didn't really know what that meant before I got to Nashville. I felt like mentors was this buzzword in business where you got to find these people to help you climb the corporate ladder. And that felt weird to me. But I got placed with a mentor in my MBA program. That was like a spiritual mentor because Belmont's a Christian college. And she changed my life. She was actually the person that gave me the job at the nonprofit that I worked for first. And I've had her as a spiritual mentor and a couple women from my church and different boards. And they kind of help guide me in the way to go because there are a few life steps ahead of me. So finding mentors has been really a game changer for me too.
Yeah, mentors are huge. That's something that's been a game changer in my life as well. That's how I got so I worked at Southern Living, and then I ended up working at a bank after that I had interned in when I was in college. And the way that I got that connection was through a mentor who was the head of marketing. So,
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then, same to you. I had mentors through church in different areas that I still talk to, even though I don't live in Birmingham anymore. I still talk to my mentors that are in Birmingham, and just, we don't talk all the time now, but like every so often, if I have something going on or if I just really need input from one of them, I can call them up or they will call me and check on me. I think that's huge. And I think I did a poll yesterday on my Instagram. I think you said that you're extroverted and I'm introverted.
There's a lot of introverts. I was shocked.
Were.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. It was like majority introverts, which I guess you attract who you are. So I attracted introverts. But hearing you talk about going out to people in coffee shops, I want to be that person that can do that. So I was like, and when you were talking, I was like, I wonder what she said to them. Because in my brain, I'm like, I have to rehearse what I'm going to say.
I still rehearse it. I'm totally rehearsed. I'm like,
hey, do you want to be friends? I know this is weird, but no, I love that.
That's what I did. I'm like, hey, you seem really fun. Do you ever want to hang out outside of this coffee shop and get lunch or something? And it's always like, what are they going to say back? And she was like, oh, absolutely, let's do it. But
and that's the thing is, like, when we're brave like that, like, you just never know what's on the other side of your yes. And
100%.
I think it's so awesome because if you think about when we were little kids, like, we would literally just go up to people and do that. And now, like, that we're adults, we like freak out and we're like,
yeah,
I don't know, like, are they going to think I'm weird and everything? But I think there's so much fruit on the other side of just being the bold person first. And I had to do that with small groups. I didn't know a single person in Birmingham hardly, and going, especially at church, because I had been involved at Church of the Highlands in Tuscaloosa
Okay,
towards
yeah,
the end of my senior year when I like came back to Jesus, but then I moved to Birmingham. Like that's a whole different crew of people.
totally.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be brave. I'm going to show up. I'm going to sign up for these small groups. I'm going to show up and just go by myself. And it was
Yeah,
so scary for me, especially as an introvert, but I just pushed myself out of my comfort zone
yeah,
and I just did it. And I ended up meeting some of my best friends through those small groups. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
that's awesome.
great.
Yeah,
And I know you talked too about kind of like generosity. It's highlighted in your book. And I would love to chat about just kind of how young adults can balance just giving their time and their
mhm.
talents and resources while also managing their like personal and professional responsibilities. Cause I know I've had seasons where I went all in a little too hard and I like had way too much on my calendar. And so I've kind of had to learn that balance. But I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of navigating, being involved and giving your time and talents, but also balancing kind of your personal and professional stuff too.
Yeah, I've always been the kind of person that wants to be involved in everything. Like, sign me up for every club, sign me up for every book club. Like, I want to be a part of every single thing that's going on, every board, every volunteer opportunity. And I did that in college and got really burned out. And then I don't ever learn lessons, I guess, and did that again in adulthood. And I was part of all these young professional boards, all these different professional development groups, so many different things, volunteering things. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. I am one foot in everything and I'm not really being fully present in all these opportunities. So I'm going to really cut back. So last year I resigned from all the boards that I was on. I took a step back from all the volunteer opportunities that I've been doing. And I was like, okay, what do I feel really called to do? What's one thing I feel really called to do volunteer wise? And what's one professional development opportunity that I feel like would be really good for me at this time? And then I'm going to take a step back from everything else because I was also in the process of writing the book and I was like, I have no free time. Like, I have got to hang out with my friends and I've actually got to get 8 hours of sleep because otherwise no one's going to want to hang out with me. Like, I need my sleep. So I think it just is trial and error figuring out what works for you. But for what's working for me right now is I am volunteering at church with the youth group, like I said, and that's on Sundays. And it's 2 hours a week and we hang out some with the girls outside of youth group. But it's a pretty big time commitment and I'm all in their lives. Like, I want to come to their plays. I want to come to their volleyball games. I want to be fully present with them. So I'm all in that. And then other than that, right now, I'm like, I just got to take a break from everything else. I'm part of a small group. I want to be really all in on that. And then I want to be really present at my job and doing some writing things outside of that. So it's definitely a balance, a little bit of a juggling game of like, okay, what really sticks in my life and matters to me in this season? And I want to be fully present and I want to be at every meeting, every opportunity that I can be a part of. But yeah, it's hard to find the right balance. And I've also learned I'm really trying to work on giving of my time, talents, and treasures. And treasures is the hardest one for me because I'm like, God, I'm broke. Like, I don't want to give up any more money. And he is like, no, you need to be generous with what I've given you. And so I've set my tithing up on auto pay because I'm like, just take it. And I don't want to like have to think about it because I'll make excuses. Like, I'm just not that good of a Christian right now. Like, I need to have it on auto pay at all times or else it's not going to happen. But I think that that's something not even just missing in our generation, but generations across the board. Generosity has gone down. People aren't giving as much to their local churches. People aren't giving to nonprofits quite as much as they used to. I think that we need to be on the lookout for ways to give. And it doesn't matter if it's just $5 or $100 or $1,000. It matters to whoever you're given to. And God's after what our heart posture is, not what, the number is that we can give. So I think that really matters. But it's hard to do because this is tough on the streets. It's tough in this economy. Like, it's not, cheap to be alive right now. So
Yeah.
I think those are a couple of things that I would encourage listeners to do.
Yeah. No, I totally get that because I struggled with that in my 20s too. I'm like, I'm paying off student loans, but I'm
Yeah.
still trying to tithe. And yeah, I remember it could be tough at times, but I think it's trusting God with, open hands of God, like, I'm not giving you this money because you need the money.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
giving it to you because I don't want money to have that power over me.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's me like in faith saying, hey, here's a little bit of what I got.
Here's what I got to offer.
Yeah. Yes. But I know it definitely is hard. And I feel like churches do still teach on generosity. Obviously, they talk about it like every Sunday and stuff. But I do feel like the generations have changed a little bit from even, my generation to like my parents' generation and how money has been talked about in the church. And so I feel like some of those like classic principles that
Yeah.
like we maybe grew up with just aren't
Right.
as prominent as they used to be, but they're still very important. And us like making sure that we're, understanding what scripture says about it and praying
Yeah.
through and doing what God's calling us to.
Yeah. So good.
And then I know, again, kind of just reflecting on your 20s, and you kind of touched on some of this, but if there was just one pivotal lesson that you hoped readers take away from your book, what would be kind of the biggest takeaway you hope they leave your book with?
Yeah. I would say that the thing that I've learned the most in my 20s is that God's best for me is on the other side of courage. I always see these things. I'm like, I want to do this, but who am I to do that? Or who am I to ask this friend to hang out? Or who am I to apply for this job? And every time I take a leap of faith, God meets me there, whether I get the opportunity or not. I learn so much from him and who he is and he's created me to be. So I would say God's best for you is on the other side of courage. Apply for the job
Mm,
that you really, really want. It's your dream job and see what happens. Ask a friend to lunch, jump in a small group and show up and not know anybody and then see what happens. And we have to do a lot of trial and error as humans. And it's hard, but courage teaches us so much about who God is because he's so courageous. And I have seen so much of that in my life in my 20s.
yeah, I love that. And everything you've talked about shows the courage you have had throughout your 20s too, and the just fruit that came from that. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
kind of switching gears a little bit, just because I know that this is such a big thing that affects women and men, but I feel like it's mostly women that get affected by comparison. What encouragement or practical steps would you encourage women with to kind of fight comparison, fight like decision fatigue, and just kind of work through that like clarity and contentment that they can have in any season of their life?
Yeah. The thing that's helped me the most is I am so quick to get on social media and compare myself to everybody else's lives. And so I've deleted all the apps off my phone except for Instagram because I need it for some work things, but don't have TikTok anymore. I don't have Facebook on my phone. I can get on my computer if I need to, but I don't ever really think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I try to stay off Instagram as much as I can because I get on there and there's a pregnancy announcement or an engagement. And I'm like, why is that not me?
Yeah.
But limiting the time that I'm on social media has really helped, which is I have no self control. Like I have to delete the apps. I can't set the little like screen
Timer.
time. I hit ignore every single time. So that just doesn't work for me. So some of y'all probably have better self control than me, but that's just not going to work for me. And then at the beginning of the weeks, I try to set up some guardrails of, okay, I obviously am an extrovert. I want to hang out with people every single night. I want to have plans every single night. And if I do that, by the end of the week, I'm like, oh, okay, I have nothing left to give. I have no words left to say to anyone. And I feel angry because I'm so tired. So I try to have one weeknight where I don't do anything, which is really hard because then I start thinking about things and overthinking my entire life. And I like to stay busy so I don't have to think about the things that are going on in my life all the time. So that's actually been good for me and God because we're sitting in it together. But that's been really hard for me. And just getting enough sleep and exercise, people say that enough, but all the time. But it has helped me so much to go, okay, I am going to get 8 hours of sleep tonight. And I'm going to wake up and walk for 30 minutes on the treadmill and move my body. But decision fatigue is the worst. It is so hard. And I get overwhelmed with too many texts or too many voice memos or all these different things. Even last night, I had a friend text me before an event. Do you want to get dinner? And I just spiraled for an hour of like, can I get dinner? Do I have time to get dinner? What do I want for dinner? What am I going to do? And it's just like, say yes or no and just keep
Yeah.
moving. I've had
Yeah.
to learn that the hard way of like, answer a text in the moment, answer a friend in the moment, and just be firm with your answer. And it doesn't really matter. You're not being
Yeah.
mean by saying, okay, I need to control my time. I need to sit at home for an hour before this event and just read a book and stare at a wall and do nothing. That's not a bad thing. But yeah, it's hard in this season of life because it feels like there are a million decisions to be made, and I want to make the right ones. But it's better to be quick with your decisions than to just kind of sit with them too long
Mhm.
because then I'm never going to answer anybody or make any decisions. I'm just going to overthink it and then nothing's going to happen. But it's really hard. We need to be more others focused than self focused. And that's hard
Mhm.
for me because I'm always thinking about me. We're always thinking about ourselves. But I think going back to volunteering and getting outside of what we normally do really helps because I've got to think about somebody else. If you're having a hard time, you've gone through a breakup or having a hard time with friends, or you're having a hard time at your job, volunteering really, really helps you think about somebody else for a little bit. And that's helped me so much because in a hard season, all I want to think about is myself and my problems. So that's some encouragement I would give people too.
Yeah, I think that's great because I know for myself too, if I scroll too much on social media, I get in this comparison spiral so quickly. And I'm like, I should have thought to do it that way. Or how come I didn't think of that? Or no, does anyone care what I'm posting? You know, it's like, I have to like take a step back and be like, nope.
Yeah.
God called me to this. I don't need to compare and I need to get off social media.
Yes.
And yeah, the decision thing, I've worked through that too, of just trying to make faster decisions and just knowing that I'm not making careless decisions, but I'm making faster ones, knowing that God's got me on the other side of it. And if I detour for a second, he's going to bring me back and it's going to be okay. It's not that deep.
Yeah. So true.
And I think we just have to like, because I've thought of that too, even with like different purchases and stuff. If it's something I'm like, I know this will really help my business. There's a lot of money, but and it's like, just if it's something that's going to be beneficial, just do it.
Do it. That's how I feel about book stuff
or
too.
if you don't have peace about it, don't do it. Just make it simple. Like, don't overthink it. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, books. I'm like, look at that girl. She's doing all these sales in books, and should I be doing that? And I'm like, I have a full-time job on top of writing books.
Yeah,
it's okay that my life doesn't look the same as everybody else's, but we feel like we've got to be 100 steps ahead of where we are, and it just doesn't work like that.
Well, and it's hard because we look at the surface level with comparison of just like, what do we see in the immediate? But it's like, we don't know their financial situation. We don't know their connections. Like, we don't know what season of life they're in. And sometimes we compare when maybe they're just in a different season of life where they're able to focus on that stuff more. Or maybe they're in a season of life where they just have more money than we do right now. And so it's like, we can't compare apples to apples when it comes to those types of things. And I think knowing that makes it like so much better.
Yeah, 100%.
But you've given a lot of great advice so far. And I do want to ask, I always ask people, because the show is called the Trailblazer Talks, I always like to ask the guests, what would be one piece of advice that you would give others that God has taught you along your trail in life?
I talked about this a little bit earlier. Evaluating what's on the pedestal of my life is really important. I, for a long time, had relationships or friendships or school or work on the pedestal of my life. Like, that was the center of everything I did and thought about. And when those things would crumble, it was like, who am I outside of these things that I've acquired? And having the Lord on the pedestal of my life recenters everything. I feel at peace within myself when I have him on the pedestal of my life. I don't feel the need to compare myself to everybody else or put these things on a worldly pedestal. So yeah, I would say doing a little inventory check of, okay, what am I thinking about constantly? Am I thinking about my faith, the Lord, friends, siblings, work, whatever it is, and kind of reevaluating that every day, because it's a constant battle to put the Lord on the pedestal of my life. It's not something that comes easy or natural to any of us. So that's one piece of advice I would give, is just look at your life and see what you think matters the most to you. And is that the Lord?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Now, kind of switching gears to just ending with a little bit of a fun question as we wrap up. What's something that you're loving right now that brings you joy? And it can be anything. It could be a book. It could be a show, song, whatever.
Two things come to mind. The number one is Love is Blind. I love Love is Blind. That's a new season right now. I don't know what it is. It just fascinates me that people are getting engaged sight unseen. Like, it's jarring and also really interesting. And then pickleball has taken over my life a little bit. I'm not really good, so don't take that away from this. But I am taking lessons, and I'm taking it through this high school. And it's a lot of the high school kids' parents and me. So it's like me and a bunch of 15-year-olds, and we're just like balling out on the pickleball courts. So that's been really fun. It's just hilarious every week. You never know what's going to happen. And it's really humbling to go to hit a shot and you miss completely in front of all these people. So that's been an exercise in humbleness. But yeah, that's been so much fun. I feel like I'm late to the pickleball craze, but yeah, it's been bringing me a lot of joy. It's hilarious.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've tried pickleball a couple of times, and I'll go play if people ask me, but I grew up playing tennis. And everyone tries to say like, oh, it's like tennis. I'm like, it is not like tennis.
I'm the same way. I grew up playing tennis, and I'm always like, trying to hit a shot.
Are different.
And the coach is like, stop playing tennis. Like, this is not how it works.
And like, it's more like ping pong or like paddleball or something. Like, it is not. Because the rules are just so different from tennis.
But the scoring, I'm like 0-0-2. What is going on here?
I know, and like the kitchen, and like you can't do overhanded serves and stuff. I'm like, I've always done overhand.
Yes, that's all I know. Yeah.
I know, it's so different, but it is really fun. I
Yeah,
think that's
it's fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, anything you wanna leave the listeners with before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say if you're in your 20s or 30s, give yourself some grace today. It's hard being human, it's hard being an adult. We're all figuring things out, and nobody has it as together as you think they do. So just know that you're so loved, that you're so worthy of being right where you are, be fully in, and be all in wherever you are, where God has you in this season. And just give yourself some grace. It's hard out there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I know people are gonna wanna connect with you, so how can everyone connect with you? Where can they find your book? All the good things.
Yeah, my book's on Amazon and Barnes& Noble, Books A Million, all the places where books are sold. And then I'm on all the social media platforms. I'm not as much on Facebook right now, clearly, or TikTok, but you can find me on Instagram at Spencer Veazey. And I'm also on Substack. If anybody's a Substack fan, I've got an email list over there. I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll link that in the show notes too. So if you're listening, head to the show notes so that you can find all the links to her stuff. But Mary Spencer, thank you so much for being on the show. This was such a wonderful conversation that I know is going to help so many people in their 20s and 30s and different seasons of life.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. Thanks for having me. This was so fun.